Unlike the McDonald's Quarter Pounders you'll find in Paris, this podcast has the same name on either side of the Atlantic Ocean. And what is the name of that podcast, I hear you ask? Well, of course, it's that song from that movie, with cheese. Oh me.
Oh my.
Yeah, well done. Thank you for joining that song from that movie, the journey through the very best and worst of movie songs. This is your explicit warning for this episode. Seriously, this is your explicit warning, host, Dietrich. And if any of you fucking pricks move, he'll execute every motherfucking last one of you. Alex.
That's good.
Yeah, descended very rapidly there into the swears.
Yeah, not to 100.
The hard language. But it is factual, though. I can sense when you're not really paying attention to our voices, and I will react accordingly.
And equally, we're also joined by a soft, moist, shapeless mass of matter, Ben.
Mum? Sorry, that's what she usually calls me.
This is normally the segment it's called, What Have We Been Watching This Week? However, I've been to the cinema, Alex has probably watched an episode of Succession, but what we really want to know, Ben, what do you think of the Lightyear trailer?
Is that Ben just like turning off his laptop and leaving?
Ben? Do you want to tell the good folks at home what you think about Lightyear?
I can't tell if this is him just being quiet.
No, I can't either.
I actually quite liked the trailer, but I will make sure I don't like the film.
You'll make sure you don't like it.
It's not really classed in the same. It's not like Toy Story 5, is it? Like they're starting again. So if they do 3 Buzz Lightyear films, I might enjoy them all. Is
this one of these things where you're fine with it, but Alex is going to get really annoyed with it because it retcons Buzz Lightyear of Star Command?
Just funny though, because when I watched the trailer, I was like reading loads of articles about how it fits into the Toy Story universe, I guess it would be, and they were talking a lot about Toy Story Star Command, Buzz Lightyear Star Command. Sorry. So yeah, I'm also going to be furious about that. But I am also a bit annoyed that you didn't ask me what I saw this week, because I did go to the cinema this week for the first time in 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What did you go see?
I went to see Dune.
Oh yeah, what do you think?
I thought it was really good.
Have you read the books?
Yes, well, I've read the first one. I read the first one like about 6 or 7 years ago, but I didn't realise, because I hadn't been keeping up with the news, that it was only going to be the first half of the first book.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I feel like I had kept up with the news, and as soon as it starts, it says Part 1.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to ruin any of the actual plot if people haven't seen it, but it felt very much like the ending was the middle. It didn't feel like a natural ending because it isn't. It is the middle of the first book, and a lot of good stuff happens in the second half. Like a lot of the best stuff happens in the second half. So it was a bit. I really enjoyed it, and it was very true to kind of how the book is, which was great, unlike the David Lynch one, which is just mad. But I felt like I was watching it, enjoying it, but feeling like a lot of people in the room were confused as to what they were watching. But
I think that's just the problem of Dune.
Yeah, I think a lot of people went in thinking, "Oh, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya," and then were like, "What's going on? Why are there giant worms?" But really good though. I mean, I really liked it. I think the atmosphere of it is amazing, and
it's loud.
It is loud. It's loud. It is quite slow paced though, isn't it? As well. So like for a sci-fi, I just can't imagine a lot of people who went in there thinking, "Oh, this is going to be like the next Star Wars," were that impressed. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
It's done very well on the HBO instant streaming service in America, which it's already been commissioned for a sequel because it hadn't been confirmed, which would have been weird to just end it there. But it will come out eventually.
Right.
They didn't film them at the same time.
They didn't film the second half at the same time.
No, I'm pretty sure
they haven't.
Right, well, that's mad, really. Because, like, they actually just were like, you know what, we're still going to commit to doing the first half.
There's no ending.
There's literally no ending.
There is no ending to it.
It's weird. You're still like, oh, I've been here for 2.5 hours. I guess it's finishing now. You sort of sat there thinking, this feels like they're making an ending.
Yeah.
More than it actually feeling like one. Yeah, it's odd.
I also saw Dune.
I haven't seen Dune. I've been to see its Marvel equivalent, Eternals.
It's Marvel equivalent.
Was it as crap as they say?
It's as sandy and bland as Dune.
Do you know, I read an interesting article though about it because it said that it was the first Marvel film to feature a sex scene.
Yeah, that is weird. I went yesterday, so it was like Saturday afternoon, and the cinema's full of children. There's this random scene where Richard Madden and Gemma Chan are completely naked, and it's like, well, one, I want to see more, but two, I don't think the kids in the cinema should be seeing this.
This is the kind of film I pay for.
It's alright. It's not great.
Cool. I was going to go to the cinema this afternoon, so I won't see that now. Thanks, Dave.
Well, I went to see the My Hero Academia movie as well yesterday.
Oh, really? Did you?
Yeah. There was just me, my wife, and two other people who kept reacting to everything like, "Whoa, man, whoa!" I can't believe, oh my god!
It was me.
It was a lot of fun,
and that was just your wife.
Whoa! So this week we're going back to Quentin Tarantino, and this time for his classic Pulp Fiction, along with all of its songs. That's the topic of today's episode and next week's episode as well.
Oh, there's a lot of songs.
So to find out what was happening in the world when the movie came out.
Time for some history.
It is time for some history, and we be vibing. So yes, we're going to October 1994, which was when Pulp Fiction was released in the United Kingdom. The Nobel Prize in Economics goes to John Hassania, John Nash, and Reinhard Selten. People know who John Nash is? Movie aficionados?
No.
No, did he create Bagel Nash?
Someone won an Oscar for portraying him.
John Nash.
Does not sound like that. It was Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind.
Oh, yes.
It's the man who was influential in creating
guy.
game theory, yes, while also suffering with schizophrenia.
Yes.
Spoiler.
And seeing Paul Bettany's everywhere.
Yeah. What a horror. In other news, Venus Williams makes her professional debut at 14, winning her first match before a very illustrious career. And Alex, I've got 2 words for you.
Is it Will Smith?
It's Daewoo. The Korean car company announces it will start selling cars in the UK, and you cannot walk down a street nowadays without seeing a handful of Daewoos.
Was that a Mike Bassett reference, Ben?
It was, yes, it was.
Brilliant.
For those unaware, Daewoo is one word. I can't remember the last time I saw a Daewoo.
No.
Do they even exist anymore?
Probably not.
I don't think so. Which is a shame because I need a new car. I'll let you know next week. But yes, in more related news, Pulp Fiction was released. It was the second film by Quentin Tarantino with a very star-studded cast, including John Travolta, Uma Thurman, Samuel L. Jackson, and Bruce Willis, among many others, chronicling the experiences of several lives intertwined within the criminal world of Los Angeles. Before we go into some details about the film, straight up, what are your guys' thoughts? We've already covered Reservoir Dogs, so where does this stand compared to that?
Yeah, so I think we did speak about it on the Reservoir Dogs episode and sort of like Reservoir Dogs versus Pulp Fiction debate. I rewatched Pulp Fiction this week, and I think this has solidified my view of it. So while there are things I like about this movie, it's so bogged down by the backstory of Bruce Willis's character. I just can't say it's a completely great film. It is definitely not as good as Reservoir Dogs. It just tilts me back to Reservoir Dogs as the tighter, better experience whilst you're watching it. I love everything involving Samuel Jackson when he's on screen. Travolta and Uma Thurman are brilliant, but I just can't get past the fact that Bruce Willis's character and backstory is boring as shit. You could realistically cut out the middle 50 minutes of this movie and you wouldn't lose anything.
Okay. Alex?
I disagree, but I also understand what you're saying about that backstory section. But there is, like, if we directly compare it to Reservoir Dogs, we spoke about in the episode, there's that weird part in the middle where it shows the backstory of Mr. Blonde and how they got into the whole situation in the first place and stuff, and I think that's weird. But I do agree that Reservoir Dogs is a tighter film, but it's a much simpler story. I think I said in that episode that I preferred this one, and I do still stick by that. I think like when I first saw it, which was when I was probably way too young, below the age of 18, I was like, oh, it's all cut up and it makes no sense. And that's why it's good. You know, like that's how you feel as a child.
I don't get it. That must make it good.
Yeah, exactly. But I think like the more I've watched it, I think the more I've actually come to appreciate it. And I've listened to quite a lot of people talking about this film, and like I've seen videos of people like trying to dissect it and stuff, which I suppose for some people could make it less enjoyable, but I kind of like think it has helped to understand what it's actually doing a bit more. And it's packed full of these really sort of fun, you have to kind of see it to believe it sort of moments, like where they is it I was gonna say it's Vincent, isn't it? John Travolta shoots that guy by accident in the car, and then there's a little dancing scene with Uma Thurman, and then there's the adrenaline shot, and and obviously the moment, the final scene. And I heard it described once as like being a bit like a shared wild memory with your friends. Like from the outside it makes no sense, but you have to kind of be there to understand it. And I think that kind of, to me, sums up what the film is about. Like, Tarantino sort of pieces together these sort of like seemingly like random fragments to tell a story sort of about friendship and connection, about creating like sort of moments of surreal togetherness that form like lasting bonds. And I feel like as an audience, that's kind of how I feel about it. That like I have like a lasting bond with this film because like I feel connected to those really strange moments that are sort of pieced together as a whole. And I kind of see people talk about it as like, it's like a homage to collage, which I think is a great sentence.
Yes, yeah.
Homage to
very,
collage.
very good.
And sort of you see the way the film like sort of splices like old pulp stories with this non-linear narrative and like the pop culture references. But also, as we'll go into with the music, is really anachronistically placed in a lot of scenes. And it's kind of just finding new ways of combining things that don't seem to make sense together to create a new story. And that's kind of how like friendships are. Like, I do think the film is about like friendships. It's about people coming together who don't feel right or have their own weird quirks, and yet it creates these sort of strange, interesting moments. And like it's I think that's what makes the film stand out so much, because it is just more about like shooting these crazy moments and piecing them together to create a random whole that sort of makes sense together, but doesn't make sense on its own. Like the bits on their own don't make sense at all. If anyone ever tried to do something similar again, it probably wouldn't work, but it just works so perfectly in this case because everything is tailored around it working, if that makes sense. Like even from the dialogue, like the beginning scene, for instance, where you introduced Tim Roth's character and the Honey Bunny and Sweetie Pie or whatever they're called, and what they're talking about makes literally no sense at all. But then by the end of the film, it kind of everything comes together again. And I know I've rambled on a bit, but I think it just
no. I think it all makes sense.
Yeah, I do like it, but I feel like it's almost a one-off. Like I feel like it wouldn't work again. Anything else that would be similar would just feel like it was copying it. And I think a lot of people have probably tried to do that.
Which is interesting because it is, in a way, it's as you said, a homage to collage. It is basically a copycat of a lot of other things before it.
But doing it in a slightly different way, like combining things together.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say that is what all films are in a lot of ways, but this one is so openly and obviously a homage to every other film that's come before in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I guess it's the left field films. His knowledge of film, he took bits from those that you've not seen, spaghetti westerns. For people unaware, Pulp Fiction refers to pulp magazines, which were filled with crime stories, incredibly punchy dialogue, heavy violence, of which Pulp Fiction emulates all of that. These aren't like sort of center stage in the zeitgeist or in mainstream culture. He just picks them apart and kind of finds a way to make them relevant, or is sometimes, in the case of Pulp Fiction, quite ahead of the curve, and I think recycles this. It's like a watershed moment similar to what happened in the 60s with films like Bonnie and Clyde, Straw Dogs, Clockwork Orange, like the violence, making violence mainstream again, and quite sexy, quite exciting, in some ways quite funny, in a very black humour sense. I find it very difficult to label Pulp Fiction. Websites like Wikipedia refer to it as a black comedy. I think that's too reductionist, because I think it is almost everything. You could describe it as a crime drama. I think you could describe it as a black comedy, because I think it definitely does have elements of that. You could describe it as a sort of it's almost got like buddy cop elements. It has some weird, like, very, very weird romance elements. It's got like the boxing fights. There's a lot going on. And yeah, it's very hard to pin down. It was interesting we're saying that, though, about it being a watershed moment, because there's a very interesting bit I found. So, famous British critic John Ronson, in the mid-90s, I think it's mid to late 90s, he was attending the National Film School's end-of-semester screenings. So this is, young up-and-coming directors. And he was assessing in his book the impact of Pulp Fiction, and he said, out of the 5 student movies he watched, 4 incorporated violent shootouts over a soundtrack of iconoclastic 70s pop hits. 2 climaxed with the all main characters shooting each other at once. And 1 had 2 hitmen discussing the idiosyncrasies of the Brady Bunch before offing their victim. Not since Citizen Kane has one man, referring to Tarantino, appeared from relative obscurity to redefine the art of movie making, which I think is a very punchy way of describing it, that he basically, every sort of late teen, young adult, wanted their movies to be like this, to be so sort of, shooting from the hip, really in your face. Thoughts?
It's just really interesting. I love that way he described it. And I think that's kind of what I was saying, like, I don't think it would work that well if anyone else would try it now, but I think that's because so many people did try. It feels like people did try to emulate it, and it did seem to just like instantly be this kind of film that everyone just loved. And similar with Reservoir Dogs, wasn't it? It was just like we were talking about. It's just like just so immediately just created like this cultural shift, and it still has that relevance today. It's funny, like, I've had a few conversations recently about the film Avatar and the fact that it hasn't really left much of a cultural footprint, even though it was like it's the second biggest box office film of all time. Back to the biggest. And it's like, but other than maybe like people dressing up at the time as like blue aliens for Halloween, it's had really no cultural footprint. Whereas both this film and Reservoir Dogs still continue to have it to this day, and it was like an independent film. It's interesting, isn't it?
Both this film and Reservoir Dogs are almost like milestones in cinema.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like if you were going to go back through time and say you need to watch this to get this to get this, sort of you have to go through these 2 films.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where we're using Avatar, like you could probably just skip straight over it.
yeah. It's because I guess this is Tarantino style, and there probably isn't a director that had his first 2 films. He reinvented the industry.
Yeah.
He made Miramax like the behemoth that it was for independent cinema.
I don't know if that was a good thing or not, considering what happened with Weinstein.
It's probably not a good thing, because if you're unaware, Miramax was led by Harvey Weinstein, which led to him becoming the powerhouse that he was. Mainly because he loved violence. I wonder why.
Yeah.
And a lot of other production companies rejected Pulp Fiction at the time. And I think, like, again, going back for history, things like Clockwork Orange, it works well in a film's favour if there's a shunning of it from other parts of the industry or public. It's like The Exorcist. You need that hysteria, that sort of like, how dare they make this film? That's going to make people see it more. I don't think we will ever have a watershed moment like that again in film. I think the internet has just made us so desensitized, and with how media, the news is nowadays, I just can't ever see another huge change in one film that affects everything. But, prove me wrong, directors. So, the film had critical and commercial success of the time. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is the most prestigious prize. It was nominated for Best Picture, losing out to Forrest Gump. I mean, I can kind of see that with how it was very much more Oscar film.
Yeah, you can really get a more contrasting 2 films.
No, you can't, can you? It did win Best Original Screenplay, which Tarantino has famously said that's the one he cares about, and he wants eventually to hold the record for most screenplay Oscars. Do we know who has the most?
Oh, that's a good question. Is it someone like from a long time ago?
Yeah, I suppose still famous, probably for sometimes not the right reasons.
I was going to say Roman Polanski.
No, it's a good guess. It was Woody Allen.
Oh, Woody Allen. Right.
So I think he has 3, and Tarantino has 2. I think he's one behind. But Woody Allen also has 16 nominations because the guy made a lot of films. Moving slightly on to what we want to talk about, as we've discussed previously with Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino is meticulous with his music choices, being the mediophile he is, the all-consumer of music and film. There was no original score for Pulp Fiction, as with Reservoir Dogs, and if you read the screenplay for Pulp Fiction, you will see that Tarantino writes the name of the songs into the scenes. He knows what piece of music he wants when he writes it. He already has it in his mind. He's not doing it in editing. He's not thinking about it. It's so core to what he wants to be going on. Even if the song is background, it has a place in the film. It's often sometimes being played on radio, or in some case in this film, in the diner. It's very much I won't say centre stage, but it's part of the storytelling. I'm assuming you guys agree. Of course you do.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
But there was a soundtrack release for the film. It reached 21 in the Billboard Top 200, again with the popularity of the film. And it contains 13 songs from the movie, along with several others that were left out and dialogue snippets interspersed between the songs. And for the purpose of this pod, we will look at those 13 songs, gulp, some in more detail, with others as we work through the film in order.
I'm worried because I've only got a list of 9 on my notes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got 9.
There's some non-lyrical ones that I've just included for the purpose of a certain discussion. So we'll try and make it fun.
That's the aim.
I wipe the sweat from my brow. I've made sure to write in my notes.
Should have made another cup of tea.
Yeah. Put a kettle on, boys. The first song in Pulp Fiction, and it kicks off with a banger, is Misirlou by Dick Dale and his Deltones. What a name for a band. And this song plays out just as the credits begin, as we see the title cards roll in and the star-studded cast begin to appear over those words, Pulp Fiction. What do we think of this song? It does kick off with a oomph.
I'll let you go first, Dee, given that it's a credits scene. I feel like you'll have things to say.
Well, I mean, it's already had a scene before it, so it's not quite...
Oh, I see, yeah.
Opening credits, but I'm not sure how you can't like this song. It's got such a bounce and a high tempo to it, and when you juxtapose that with the yellow text on the black screen for a few minutes, then it's just a thumbs up from me. Although, did you guys find it hard not to sing Black Eyed Peas over the top of this?
Yes. yeah. Now again.
Pump it louder.
Unfortunately, yes, I did have that same reaction.
Unfortunately, yeah. I was just singing it as you were talking in my mind.
Damn you, Will I Am.
Yeah, as we have said many times. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, well, I was going to say it's the iconic song from Pulp Fiction, but maybe there are a couple that come later on. But I think this is the one that initially comes to mind, just because of that. It's sort of like, it's almost like an explosion into the film, isn't it? Like, it just comes on so loudly all of a sudden, when it's like, "Ooh!" And like, because you've had that really, I was going to say a meaty scene. It's not a particularly long scene, but there's a lot of back and forth dialogue going on, and you're kind of like trying to adjust to what they're actually talking about and understand it. Then all of a sudden there's guns, and then all of a sudden the credits are starting, and you're like, what's going on? What's happening?
Oh yeah, it's packing a punch, isn't it? Like I think it ends on like the freeze frame of like is it Eli Roth?
Tim Roth, that's it. Yeah, sorry. Trying to point at the gun, and it just kind of like snips, and then it gets into that sort of just that repeated one guitar string just strumming away. But also brave as well to have like. And like you said, it didn't come right at the beginning, but just like immediately after about 4 minutes or something, just to cut straight to a credit sequence that lasts for quite a long time at the beginning of the film. Like you're in and then you're out and then you're back in again in a completely different place with different characters. It takes some time getting used to, I suppose, but it does certainly get you attention, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an absolute killer track. Probably saying it already, probably is the best song, personally, potentially.
But stick around for next week when we do best song.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. As I've often gone through talking to them, I realise, actually, there's quite a few. But I just think it kicks off with such a flurry. I mean, Dick Dale and his Deltones, they're quite iconic in the surf rock weird little genre that kind of came out in the early 60s, was gone by the mid 60s, which a lot of the songs in this film, not all of them, but a lot of them have references to that style of music. And I think Tarantino's trying to set that scene, even though I don't think the film is set. I don't know if the film is set in the 60s. It doesn't really feel like it at all times. It's hard to grasp. But that's definitely what he's going for, set in LA. It's that cool sort of feeling. It gives kind of a... I don't know. It's the Hawaiian shirt, the feeling like, I'm chill, I'm relaxed, I'm ready for something. But yeah, the melody of the song is very weird. It's based on an Eastern European folk song. Never was aware of it. It was fairly famous in the 60s, came back with a bang because of Pulp Fiction. And yeah, it's only played on one guitar string. Don't know how obvious that is to someone with an untrained ear. Alex? I can. Is it very obvious? Well, I don't know if it's very obvious, but I think certainly you can see how it could be done. Yeah. Apparently, a young fan dared Dick Dale to make a song with just one string. There you go. Did it. Next. Tarantino famously said, having Misirlou as your opening credit, it's just so intense. It just says you're watching an epic, you're watching a big old movie, and it just throws down the gauntlet that the movie now has to live up to. I think that's kind of fair.
Yeah, I think as well, like, to go, you mentioned, like, about the spaghetti western references. It does have that kind of western sound to it almost, weirdly, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think is it like it's not a bugle, it's like is it like a, what is the instrument when it kicks in the horn?
Yeah,
that's that one.
Yes.
That's it's that element.
It was me. It was me doing it the whole time.
It was yeah, of course, yeah. That element definitely feels like a spaghetti western. Q Magazine rated it 89 out of 100 greatest guitar tracks. Guitar tracks.
One of those guitars.
Guitar track.
And apparently was covered by the Beach Boys. Not heard that version, but yes, it's definitely a kick-ass tune. We're not even through the credits before Tarantino turns the radio station over, title card still on the screen, and we realise we are just listening to a radio station. And we are introduced to Jungle Boogie by Kool and the Gang halfway through the song, to the best part of the song, definitely. It helps me escape the DFS thoughts that I have when I listen to this.
Get down, get down.
Yeah, which is definitely, and then it says, get down to DFS for this weekend's big sale. Had a sale for about 10 years.
Still going now. I think it's clever, isn't it? It kind of immediately shows you, like all we discussed at the beginning about the film, about how things are going to be smashing into each other seemingly at random, and yet you feel like there's a really specific hand that's chosen them to do so. It's weird, and then it obviously leads perfectly into the next scene, which is in the car. And I just think it's clever, and I think it immediately sort of gets you prepared for the fact that you're going to be seeing things from different eras, potentially different tones, different themes, just like meshed together at will. Yeah. And you're just going to have to accept it. You're not going to be ready for it, and you just have to accept it.
I sort of get that it helps Misirlou become like a diegetic song in the scene, but the song's just not as good, so I just don't believe that Samuel Jackson, John Travolta would turn over the radio station for this without just turning it straight back.
It feels like it's one of those, like, you turn on the radio on any sort of, like, 60s, 70s, and 80s radio station. It's going to be this song. It's one of those where it's just like, yeah, of course it's on the radio. The middle part of this song, where it's kind of like almost like the scales going up and down, I just think is so cool, though. Like, they're actually singing the get down, you know, the and it kind of goes through the scales. That's very cool, and that's the part it starts in at. But even like you were saying, Alex, about the credits playing over, he doesn't let it drag on too much. Like, he keeps the title cards on, but switches the song. It's keeping your attention. And it's sticking to it. And this is a heavily sampled song. In total, apparently, it has been sampled 157 times in other songs over the years. Can you think of any off the top of your head?
I actually can't think of any. Madonna's coming to mind. Is there a Madonna song?
It is Madonna, yeah, well done. I can't believe you got that.
I don't know which song, though. I just feel
Erotica by Madonna, there you go.
For classics.
One of your favourites.
Just feels like something Madonna would have sampled.
Yeah, apparently Tarantino said he went with the track because it had a strong 70s vibe. He didn't say it like that, though. That's just me.
Which it does.
Yes. And yeah, Alex, Erotica by Madonna. Well done.
Yep.
Big fan. The only other one I could think of was it's used frequently on Paul's Boutique, which is the greatest sample album ever by Beastie Boys. And weird fact, it is sung not by a member of Kool and the Gang. It is sung by their roadie, Don Boyce.
Wow.
Third song of the film is a beauty. It is Al Green's Let's Stay Together, as we are introduced to the characters Marcellus Wallace and Butch Coolidge, played by Ving Rhames and Bruce Willis, as we are just forced to focus on the face of Bruce Willis as Marcellus Wallace talks to him and asks him to throw a fight. What do we think of this one? It's a cracker of a song.
It sure is. It's the perfect song for this scene as well, because within the few seconds of hearing the song, it fills like the whole scene with like the ambience of where you are, what's going on. It makes the scene almost feel warm, which is an odd thing to say, but I can't describe it any other way. And it's also all you need in terms of Bruce Willis's character. We don't need the rest of it. We've already got it here.
I feel like you're making a point there, dude. Alex?
I agree. I think it just like you just luxuriate in the song and the sort of like weird pimpy background and the
it's
nightclub.
Incredibly pimpy, isn't it? That sort of hummed red light.
Even though it fits, it's also anachronistic in the sense that there's like a lot of hard talking and swearing going on in the background, because obviously Marcellus is just talking at Butch, isn't he? And he's like, there's a fair amount of swearing going on, but it's also like the tone he uses is still quite chilled. It's just it's just like piecing these weird bits together. But I think it works really well as well to set up the fact that this is a pairing, because like the film is made up of pairings with Jules and Vincent and Maya and then Butch and Marcellus, which comes back in a big way, obviously, later in the film. So, let's stay together. They do.
Kind of.
Yeah, they do, kind of, eventually, in the end. They do, yeah. So their stories are it's sort of setting up the fact that their stories might be intertwined more than, say, Marcellus and Jules and Vincent. Because at first, obviously, you know that they work for him, so you feel like, oh, well, but he's not really involved in either of the two stories that they're involved in. It's more Marcellus and Butch, isn't it? I just think it's a really good scene as well, where it's just focused on old Bruce for a good like 5 minutes.
It really is, isn't it? You're really having to absorb his reaction.
Yeah,
because I guess he's being asked to do a lot of things that he doesn't really want to do for the sake of money.
Yeah,
and that's just the acting.
To be fair, it is Bruce Willis's standard blank hard man stare.
It's subtle, is what it is.
Yeah, it works. It works when the right director is behind it.
He is a man of subtlety.
And yeah, Tarantino said that he finds use of it, like Stay Together, as hypnotic, and like that kind of through you having to be forced to watch Willis's reaction. Like you can't look away. There's not, the song is quiet enough where it could be being played in the bar, but it's not distracting you. It's just sits very effortlessly under Marcellus's kind of deep voice. It's like the perfect voice for that moment. And he kind of says it in a very slow, methodical way. There's no rush about it. So far, I think his use of all the music is perfect. I won't say that to his face, though, in the many opportunities that I have, clearly. It is Al Green's most famous song, by far. Sorry, Al Green fans. And it's a song he said he hated in his autobiography. He hated it. I don't know if this is the classic artist hating their most famous song. Always brings me back to thinking of Warrant and Cherry Pie. Don't know if that comparison was expected by any of you, but I always just remember how I remember them saying how much they hated it. It was a number one signal. He was forced to record the song. Maybe that's why he hated it, by producer Terry Manning, very famous producer Terry Manning, because he didn't like its slower tone. Yet, Rolling Stones magazine put it as the 60th greatest song of all time.
Wow.
I mean, that's a claim.
It's a claim.
It is a claim. Alex, claim right?
I think it's a good song. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know
is
how
it the 60th greatest song of all time?
Well, I don't know how you possibly go about creating those lists. Like, how do you just get given a list of songs, of 100 songs, and then have to put them in an order? Or do I just have to know all the songs of all time?
From my experience of reading these, being obsessed with lists, it's usually they ask all of their critics to list their 50 favourite songs, and then they aggregate them.
Right.
So it's kind of like what everyone says, which is why I'm pretty sure at the time they did this, which was around like sort of early 2010s, there was only 3 songs from the 21st century. That says a lot about the Rolling Stones. Their critics. I think the 3 songs, and I think 2 of them by Eminem.
Wasn't one of them was Hey Ya by Outkast?
Yeah, one of them was Hey Ya. Yeah, I think that's the other one. The next song, 4th song, is Bustin Surfboards by the Tornadoes. How cool does that sound? The song, instrumental, plays as Lance's wife Jodie waxes lyrical about the benefits of piercings during oral sex. Thoughts, Alex?
What about the benefits of piercings during oral sex?
Yep.
I don't have any.
I don't know what I want to say on that. It is an instrumental 45 recording with the crackling induced surf rock jam with ocean sounds including, which I loved. It's a proper mood setter. It's got that guitar reverb. Deep thoughts? Not about oral sex.
My thought is I don't think I've got this on my list of songs. The next one I've got on my list is Lonesome Town.
I didn't remember where abouts in the film it was from, but I really enjoyed the song.
Well, there you go.
It's a very cool song.
It's cool. It's very cool, and there's a few of them. That's what I mean. All the instrumental songs in the soundtrack are surf rock.
I skipped it on my notes because it doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so I just assumed it was like the other ones.
That's the level of detail we go into, folks. A lot of the like Dick Dale, famous surf rock artist. Beach Boys kind of made it famous, but then they kind of just went out into general pop. The Bustin Surfboards, the Tornadoes, that is the iconic surf rock jam, and I'm saying it here right
It
now.
is a
folks.
tune. It's a tune. Listen to it.
There you go.
Don't worry about its place in the film. Just listen to the song.
Stone Cold classic. Cool. Fifth song, Lonesome Town by Ricky Nelson. Lyrical piece. And we hear this one as we settle in to Jack Rabbit Slim's Diner, and Mia Wallace requests a $5 shake. $5. And she expects Vincent Vega to pay the exorbitant price. What do we think of this one? This is getting into a very, very famous scene, and like I said, a very famous relationship between Mia and Vincent.
So when I saw this written down, I did struggle to actually figure out what this song was in the movie. I guess similar to the
Bustin'
Bustin' Surfboards. But I think it does a very fine job of telling the audience what kind of establishment they're in, what the vibe is of this place. I do enjoy the fact that he's crowing at the idea of a $5 shake when he's just spent $100 on drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends what you prefer, milkshake or heroin, do you?
Does the milkshake have banana in it?
I was going to say, does the milkshake have heroin in it?
It'd be more than $5 if it was.
I mean, banana milkshake is unequivocally the best milkshake.
Yes, probably.
Banana and peanut butter is actually a little bit better.
Well, I can't do that one, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sorry, Ben.
Is this you ensuring that no secondsies?
It's $5, man.
It's $5, but it's a fucking good milkshake.
What do you think of this song, Alex?
Like Dee said, it was difficult to pinpoint because it's kind of just background music, isn't it, to this scene? But I think like when I sort of listened to it a bit, and like the fact that it's called Lonesome Town, I think it does just kind of, it just cements the idea that these two people are kind of singular and a bit. I mean, obviously the obvious word to use is lonely, but I'm trying to use a different word because it's
meandering through life. Sort of.
Yeah, and like actually they come together on this evening and they have this absolutely wild night, and it's kind of, and that kind of really brings them close together. But obviously, immediately is torn apart in a few scenes later when old Vincent gets it. But it's kind of, it becomes like one of those nights that they would have always remembered for the rest of their life, especially Vincent, because the rest of his life is only a few days. But it's it just sets it up, doesn't it? I think it just sets up the idea of what's about to come, and I think it works nicely. And obviously the whole thing about him getting annoyed about how much the milkshake is setting those two apart from each other to then bring them together in the dance scene.
Yeah, it definitely is a background song. Rewatching the scene, it's not overt, it's hard to hear with Tarantino's reliance and favoritism for dialogue, but it's like a soft prom song. It's no Earth Angel. It's definitely no Earth Angel. But it's definitely, it sounds like a prom song to me. And I think it's that sort of, that sort of, not young romantic, but that sort of unsure romance. It's not that I can't keep my hands off you sort of thing. It's that, like, is there an attraction here? Two attractive people just finding their way.
Yeah, it's leading, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's leading into the romance. Like, yeah.
Yes. Hands on shoulders, not on hips.
Casper style.
2-step only. The song was originally intended to be recorded as a calypso song. That would have been a bit different. Any thoughts on where the Lonesome Town Ricky Nelson is singing about is?
Gary, Indiana.
No, somewhere a bit
New
more
York
famous
City.
than Gary, Indiana.
London.
No. Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, that makes more sense because it's set in California.
France.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah, when you think, not just shouting out random geographical locations you're aware of. He said once in an interview, I was sitting in the middle of this whole thing. I was broke. Didn't know what I was going to do. My manager was giving me a few bucks, keeping me going, paying my rent. And it's this feeling that he was lost in Hollywood and didn't have much of a career after this song. So, sorry, Ricky. Hope you're doing fine. Let us know on Twitter at TSFTMPod.
So that brings end to part 1 of our look at the songs of Pulp Fiction. We've got a hell of a lot more to go through, haven't we, Ben?
8.
Oh, tune in next week. Bye.
Bye.
Casper style.
Part 2, featuring the Platinum Band. Oh, Casper Slide. Oh, sorry, I thought you meant, yeah.